I am House Majority Leader Jamie Long, and we are here to talk about the 100% clean energy bill, which we are taking up on the House floor today. So Minnesotans are demanding that we take action on climate change. It was a top 5 issue when Minnesotans were asked who they were going to be supporting and why in this past election cycle. And yesterday we had hundreds of Minnesotans come to the Capitol en masse, in force to call on us as legislators to take action on climate change. We also know that this is because climate is impacting people right now in real ways. We are seeing the change before our very eyes. In my lifetime, the January average cold temperature in Minnesota has warmed by 9 degrees. And these changes are having real impacts. They're having impacts on our way of life. Speaker Hortman and I really like to cross-country ski. There are folks who really like to ice fish. There are folks who really like to snowmobile. And those activities are going to get harder and harder. We also know that it's having more serious impacts, like the severe rain events that we are seeing with increasing frequency on our farms and in our communities and infrastructure. And it's also impacting some of our Minnesota icons, like the loon and the moose that are getting pushed out of our state. Minnesota has long been a clean energy leader. We were an early mover in developing wind energy and solar energy in the state. And as a result, we had a competitive advantage at one point, and we actually have installed over the last decade over half of all wind turbines in the United States from Minnesota companies. But we've slipped, and other states have gotten ahead of us in the clean energy race. But with this bill, when we pass 100% clean energy, Minnesota is going to be back on the map as a clean energy leader. We know that this will be the most important action that we've taken as a state to date to address climate change and to address clean energy. And we know that this is going to be good news for Minnesotans. It's going to save Minnesotans money because right now wind is the cheapest energy you can buy, and solar will be cheaper than wind within a few years. We know also that this is going to create very good jobs for Minnesotans. Tens of thousands of new jobs that we are making sure in this bill will be good paying jobs here in this state. So we have passed this through our House committee. We are taking it up on the floor today. Minnesotans are calling on us to take action on climate change, to make sure we're moving towards clean energy, and we are responding and answering that call today. With that, I'll turn it over to my Senate co-author, Senator Nick Frentz.
Thank you, Representative. Hey, everybody. Senator Nick Frentz from Senate District 18. Proud to be from North Mankato, and even more proud to stand in front of you on the threshold of the single most important piece of climate legislation passed in my time here in the Senate. I want to thank my co-author and very good friend, Representative Long, for his leadership. It is no secret he worked with all our stakeholders, and we were able to put together a bill that has participation from all parts of the spectrum, including utilities who were invited to the table at the beginning and stayed there beginning to end. The bill requires 100% carbon neutral energy from our utilities by the year 2040. That in itself is a laudable goal, but I'm proud to report it has features in the bill that are going to make this good for all Minnesotans. The carbon benefits have been mentioned. We're going to do things that the people want us to do and reduce carbon. Utilities have the ability to find their own path to this goal. The bill is what we call technology agnostic. In other words, we are not telling investor-owned utilities, rural electric co-ops, municipal electric, how to get to 100%. They have the ability to plan for themselves, taking advantage of what they have uniquely, geographically, size, membership, growth, all of that, to try to find what they think is the best path. Where I live in North Mankato used to be in the country. I'm a member of Benco Electric, a rural co-op of about 20,000 members, and I can tell you that board is perfect to make these kinds of decisions to meet these goals. They're democratically elected. They've often lived in those areas for a long time, and they do know utility work. As we go forward, the Senate has passed it out of the Senate committee, which I'm proud to chair yesterday on an 8-5 vote. It was sent to the floor. It's my expectation that we will take that bill up next week and that we will pass it. And with that, matching it up with the House language, it will go directly to the governor's desk, where I'm quite positive he will sign it. We're extremely proud of the legislation. We're proud of the combination of working men and women and the prevailing wage provisions in the bill. We're proud of the way that all utilities are in it together. And we're proud of the way that it reflects what we think Minnesotans said in the last election. And for a lot longer than that, we've had this bill going more than just this session. because I feel it responds to what they want. And I feel it does our share in carbon reduction, not just for our state and our country, but for this planet, which I think we're all hoping to live on for a few more years. And with that, I'd like to introduce Ellen Anderson. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. I'm Ellen Anderson with Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy, and I served in the Senate for 18 years and passed a lot of our clean energy laws. So I'm just going to look back for a second, if you don't mind. The very first renewable energy standard was introduced in 2001. And when we introduced that, utility engineers testified in committees and said that we could only incorporate maybe 1 or 2% renewable energy into the electric grid ever. And skeptics said that wasn't possible either, and said it was not technically, economically, or politically possible to get to 20% renewable energy. But in 2007, everything changed, and we made big steps forward here in Minnesota and passed the 25% by 2025 renewable energy standard, along with some very important other energy laws. And it was a bipartisan vote and nearly unanimous. We could do that again, it'd be awesome. Since then, we have really proven that the skeptics were wrong. Renewable energy since that time has now saved billions of dollars for Minnesota energy customers and brought health and environmental benefits and thousands of clean energy jobs to our state. And to their credits, the utilities, the grid operators, the renewable energy producers, they become experts at integrating renewable energy into the electric grid and maintaining reliability and cutting costs. And as we increase the amount of renewable energy in our system, the sky didn't fall. The lights turned on. And so it's been a long road to get to this historic day today. And now, as has already been said, it's a crucial moment for climate as we are already experiencing its impact. The science tells us that we have to cut emissions in half by the end of this decade to avoid the worst impacts of climate change, and we need to electrify much of the economy. So this bill for carbon-free electricity is the most powerful step we can take right now on climate. Minnesotans want climate action now and to protect our land, air, and water and next generations. And the 100% clean electricity standard will dramatically reduce carbon emissions and air pollution, improving our quality of life now and for future generations. And so I want to thank Majority Leader Long and Senator Frentz in particular for their leadership on bringing these bills forward. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kevin Pranis with LIUNA.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Speaker Hortman, Majority Leader Long, and Senator Frentz. It's a great honor to be here on this historic occasion. My name is Kevin Pranis. I'm Marketing Manager for LIUNA, Minnesota, and North Dakota. And I'm here today on behalf of more than 29,000 Minnesota members and family members who are represented by the Laborers International Union of North America to express our strong support for House File 7, the 100% Clean Energy Bill. Our members are skilled construction workers who build and maintain critical infrastructure, including the power plants and gas distribution systems that light our homes and businesses and keep them warm. LIUNA members recognize the world is changing and that we need to act soon in order to address climate change, not only to prevent the worst consequences, but also to position our economy and our state for the world that's coming, for the demands of businesses and consumers, and for the work that we're going to have to do. And we need to act now if we want to make sure that this change is beneficial and that we leave this state and its industries and workforce stronger rather than weaker as a result. So today, we're ready to put our skills to work. We, along with other building trades that we work alongside, ready to put our skills and our world-class apprenticeship programs to work, building the new infrastructure. And we're pleased that this bill allows that and supports the full technology toolbox. So that means extending the life of nuclear plants. It means installing thousands of megawatts in wind and solar, creating jobs all over the state. It means looking at renewable hydrogen, looking at clean hydrogen, at biomass, at carbon capture, at all the technologies that we can use to help reduce carbon. And as Senator Frentz points out, it'll be up to the utilities to pick which path fits which part of the state and their customers, but we have the skills within the trades and our training programs to deliver all of that work. This bill allows that to happen. Another top priority for LiUNA and fellow trades is to ensure that clean energy jobs are just as good and just as available to local workers as the conventional energy jobs that have supported thousands of Minnesota families for generations. This bill does that by adopting strong labor standards and requiring the Public Utilities Commission to consider the impacts on local jobs of the resource decisions and permitting decisions that they make, something our commission is a national leader on already, and that will be further supported by this bill. Finally, we needed a bill that provided a framework, a realistic path to get to 100% without compromising affordability, reliability, or the substantial economic benefits that our utility system provides. Fortunately, Minnesota's in a great position. Our utilities are already national leaders. If you look at the goals that have been adopted and the efforts of companies like Xcel and Minnesota Power and Great River Energy that are leading the nation. And so we have not only the policy in place, but we have the framework to be able to move forward. We couldn't support this bill if we were not convinced that it could be done reliably and affordably, because that's going to impact our members as well. And I would point out that Minnesota may not be the first state to adopt a 100% clean energy goal, but we're convinced that we will be the first state to actually reach it affordably and reliably, thanks to this bill. And I want to thank both chambers and the authors and committees and the committee leaders for all of the flexibility and hard work they put into coming up with really good legislation that we think represents all of the utility sector and all of the different ideas that were brought to them. Thank you. Sorry, I should be introducing.
That's okay. I got it. Hello, my name is Aurora Vautrin, and I am the Legislative and Political Director for the Minnesota 100% campaign. We are a cross-sector, statewide, multiracial, intersectional campaign to build an equitable clean energy future for everyone in Minnesota. We are faith leaders, labor unions, health professionals, scientists, youth, environmental advocates, community organizations, new Americans, indigenous leaders, rural organizations, artists, and small business owners who all believe that our future is worth fighting for. You may have seen a lot of folks around the Capitol yesterday wearing shirts that said that the future is worth fighting for. And that's because there were over 300 Minnesotans who came here ahead of the vote today to make sure that the people that represent them know that now is the time to pass 100% clean energy, and these are the legislators that are going to do it. Our coalition has had thousands of conversations with people across the state, and we can tell you that they have made loud and clear that they support 100% renewable clean energy. Our partner organizations have been doing the work to make this possible for years, on the doors, phones, and in their communities and in others, to make sure that regular people had a say in this bill. And with the unwavering commitment and dedication of our authors, I'd say that we did it, and now we have to pass it. And I think that today the House will, letting Minnesotans know that they have been heard and setting a precedent for this session and every session to come, where the policies we pass are about the future we want, the one Minnesotans deserve, and not the future we're afraid of. And Speaker Hortman's up next.
Well, good afternoon. I'm really excited to be here on the precipice of passing this bill in the Minnesota House today. There's no doubt about it, the DFLers in the state of Minnesota, from the Senate DFL to the House DFL to the governor's office, we're committed to addressing the climate crisis in Minnesota. It represents a substantial threat to Minnesota's future. We have a planet that is literally on fire, and we're seeing more frequent extreme weather events with billions of dollars of damages. Right here in Minnesota. Storms that used to be considered, once in 100 years, once in 500 years, we're seeing with increasing frequency. We seem to have special sessions on basically a decade intervals where we provide millions and millions of dollars to communities that have been damaged by flooding or extreme tornadoes. Extreme heat is becoming our new normal, and as a cross-country skier, I'm very concerned about the idea of snow-free winters in our future. Climate change is a policy area that states have an important role to play. Energy policy like this is uniquely governed by states and state PUCs. We have a responsibility to be part of the problem. I'm really delighted to stand here with former Energy Chair Jamie Long, and I don't remember what your committee was called, but it was Energy Regulated Industries, things like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, so we have three former energy chairs here And we're building on the shoulders of the people who came before us, from those who reached the historic agreement in 1994 regarding the Prairie Island nuclear plant to get renewable energy going in Minnesota, to Ellen's really inspirational work in 2007 to take the giant leap forward with renewable energy, and to the really gratifying work that we did in 2013 to create a solar energy standard. Minnesotans deserve for us to take this next step and set that course to keep moving forward. We've always been a national leader, and today we continue that work. I want to thank the majority leader for working so quickly to get this to the floor of the Minnesota House. In some ways, this is a fast timeline to get a major piece of legislation to the House floor, but as was discussed, this is legislation we have been working on for nearly a decade. It was clear that we were going to be reaching the 25 by 25 goals early, and that the next step had to be out there, that we had to say to the youth of this state who turned out in these elections, and in the 2020 elections and the elections before, that we hear you. You're asking us to take action, and we are ready to take action on climate. So with that, I will open it up for questions.
Can someone distinguish for me the different, like, it seems that there's two benchmarks in here. There's an additional eligible energy technology standard where you add 55% by 2035, and then, I mean, does this carbon-free standard by 2040 kind of supersede that?
Sure. So as was mentioned by the speaker and former Senator Anderson, we have an existing renewable energy standard, and that last goal in that standard is 25% by 2025. We met that goal 8 years early. So we do have one additional benchmark that is with the renewable energy standard, which would be 55% in 2035. But then we are adding an additional 3 benchmarks for a new clean energy standard, which would be a new standard for the state, but it builds on the same framework as a renewable energy standard. And as Senator Frentz mentioned, any technology that is carbon-free would count towards that standard, and that the endpoint there is 100% carbon-free by 2040.
So maybe the technical difference would be some ways to get to carbon-free, like nuclear is not necessarily a renewable under that other standard?
Correct. Yeah.
Well said, well said.
I was like, I don't think I know the difference.
Any other questions?
There's a lot of concern from Republicans that calling this a blackout bill. There is some actual concern out there that we won't have energy we need in times of crisis. Can you address that a little bit, just that concern, and why or why not it may be unfounded or have any merit?
Well, first of all, the off-ramp that's provided in the bill would allow a utility to say, we aren't able to provide the 100% standard and within reliability or affordability grounds. So the Public Utilities Commission has the ability to say if it can't be done. It can be done. And I'd also point out that in addition to Minnesota being below the average residential bill average, in other words, we're providing it at a cost in a cold state below the national average for XL and Minnesota Power, that we're making tremendous strides in reliability, including some things you'll hear from the 2 energy committees coming out on IIJA and IRA money that'll work with resiliency, that'll work to build out transmission. And we made some promises to some of these utilities that on the regulatory front, some of which is in the bill already, to expedite certificate of need, and on the transmission front, where we can generate energy, but we have to get it to the end user. So to those who say it's gonna be a blackout bill, I'd say, no, it's gonna be lights on, and it's gonna be affordable, and we're gonna be proud of it. And just in the same way as the 2007 standards, we're gonna make this work, and we're gonna make people proud of it, and I would add, not a moment too soon.
I'll just add real briefly, in the news today was that XL Energy is now going to be bringing into the state a really innovative new long-term duration battery storage technology. And that battery storage is based on iron. They're the second utility in the state to do that. Great River Energy was the first. And so we're using a Minnesota material to make sure that we are dealing with having some long-term duration storage to help with the backup and help with reliability. So utilities in the state are innovating.
Can I just add, I think former Senator Anderson put it really well. We have heard this before, time and time again, that it was impossible, it couldn't be done. And in fact, our utilities and the really smart people and hardworking people who work at them have exceeded the standards that we have set in every standard that the state has put forward on renewable energy.
How confident are you that all parts of your bill will live up to legal scrutiny? Because it sounds like North Dakota is going to file a lawsuit as well, the bill is written right now. So how confident are you that it'll stand up in court?
Confident.
Okay. Why?
Confident because of the language of the bill. It says that a utility must procure carbon-free energy or an equivalent amount of carbon-free energy to get to 100%. And I think that addresses the concern that we're regulating interstate commerce. We are not. We are setting a standard for interstate utilities, for utilities that work across state borders. But the standard we actually apply, and this is in amendments that were added after the introduction of the bill, make it clear what we're saying is we expect Minnesota utilities to meet 100% carbon-free either by the carbon-free generation itself, by pursuing renewable energy credits, by developing additional renewable energy themselves, and allowing those boards to make the decision how they get there.
Are there teeth in this bill that would in some way penalize, or what happens if a utility just doesn't do it or can't do it by the deadline? Is there some type of penalty, or?
Well, the Public Utilities Commission has to approve resource plans, and there's a reporting requirement in the bill. So we're depending on the Public Utilities Commission to continue to do its outstanding work. I might add that in my committee, the three commissioners who are up for confirmation were all voted to recommend to pass to the floor unanimously, bipartisan support. In my opinion, that shows that there is a real recognition that the Public Utilities Commission is in the best place to do this. I will mention something Representative Long and I have talked about, which is co-ops, municipal utilities are not rate regulated by the Public Utilities Commission, but they do already report to the Public Utilities Commission, and the off-ramp that we mentioned now would be required to be at the same time as they do their reporting. So I think the Public Utilities Commission is in the best position to, I wouldn't say penalize, I would say make sure the resource plan meets the standard or addresses the off-ramp.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add is this is the same framework that has been in law since 2007 for utilities. So there's no addition, no utility has ever had to go to the Public Utilities Commission because they've exceeded the goals, as I mentioned, 8 years early. And in the time since Senator Frentz and I have been working on the bill, solar prices have continued to plummet. They've gone down 85% in the last 10 years. And now we have the Inflation Reduction Act that has passed, which means that solar and wind energy is on sale at a 30% discount for the next decade. So we have a real ability to keep prices down and make sure we're meeting these goals.
Majority Leader, you said that this is the most significant step for curbing climate change. What are some other climate-related initiatives that we should expect this session that perhaps paint the bigger picture of climate on the docket?
Well, it is the most significant, and to put it in context, we would be in the top 5 states in the country in terms of our climate goals, our carbon-free energy goals with this bill. So we would be back in the leadership space with this bill. One of the things that clean energy does is it unleashes the ability to have clean sectors in other parts of the economy. So we can electrify transportation, we can help electrify building uses, we can electrify some industrial uses. So even though this is an energy bill and coming out of the Energy Committee, it will have real relevance to a lot of other portions of the economy too. But I know that maybe Chair Frentz, since he's the chair and I'm not anymore, can speak to what else the Climate and Energy Committee is going to do.
I think Representative Long covered it pretty much. We're looking to promote the introduction of additional electric vehicles. Obviously, General Motors and Ford, two iconic American companies, have said by 2035 it is their plan to only sell electric vehicles. So we have some expectation, demand for electricity in Minnesota is going to go up. We have already touched on resiliency. Weatherization allows us to prepare homes to take advantage of federal funds to reduce the use of energy. And I got to throw this out because I noticed the speaker had a big smile when we talked about things that have already been done, for which you deserve credit, Madam Speaker. But if you look at some of the things that have happened since 2007, there's been innovation in Minnesota. And that's something Americans have always been great at. And I would just speculate for you here on record, right? I think you're going to see some innovation that Minnesotans and Americans are going to be proud of between now and 2040, including something maybe really cool that we hadn't thought of.
Speaker Hortman, while we have you,
Can you talk a little bit about the speedy pace at which the legislature is moving and how you're prioritizing what's coming to the floor?
Sure, we are working really hard. A lot of the proposals that are moving through the House and Senate have been around for a decade. You know, you look at, for example, paid family medical leave is a bill that we're moving as quickly as we possibly can this year. It had 10 hearings in 2019. It had 10 hearings in 2021. The PRO Act, which we passed last week, had a full hearing in the Health Finance Committee, full hearing in Judiciary, full hearing in State Government Finance. So we're moving fast, but we're addressing that concern that Minnesotans have raised for as long as I've been here, that they don't want the legislature to cram everything in the last 5 weeks. We have a 20-week session, and March 13th will be the midpoint. And so I would like us to be closer to having half of the work done by the midpoint than we have in previous years, because the more we do now, the less we have to do in April and May.
Got it. Wrap it up, maybe time for one more question.
Will utilities be able to decide how they offset their emissions? Like, could they join a program, or, I mean, I guess there's only so many trees you can plant, but how would that work?
So they can't do tree plantings. What they can do is they can buy a renewable energy credit. And that's in the current law as well. And that is a very well-established standard that is only applying to renewable energy that's generated somewhere else. 60% of the renewable energy credits that are used right now in the state are from Minnesota. So it's other renewable energy that's being generated right here in the state. So it's very reliable and robust. Well, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Nice job.